What is up, everybody? This is Double G for Fight Game Media and Fight Game Media Network. What we have for you in our free podcast feed today is what we are calling the Supercut. Jeremy Finestone of Speaking of Strong Style had the idea to put together clips of all of our shows and just to give the free feed listener a taste of what is on the Patreon. In the past, we've put full episodes, and we will do another full episode in this feed this week as well. So you will hear Scott Edwards' a 5-star Joshi Show later this week. But in this Supercut, I have a list of the shows here, of the segments. First one you're going to hear is the wrap with Keela and Scott talking about Becky Lynch and Trish Stratus, the cage match that they had at Payback. On In the Clinch, you'll hear Ryan Frederick and Paul Fontaine talk about the retirement of the Korean Zombie. On The Boom with James McDaniel and Kevin Ely, they'll talk about CM Punk's legacy in AEW. On The Dynamite Show with Paul Fontaine and Jeff Hawkins, they'll talk about locker room politics in AEW. On Power Bombshells with Mel and Sam, Sam talks about her media call question with Tony Khan and the overall discussion of women in AEW and Wrestle Dream. And a 5-Star Joshi Show, the aforementioned Scott E. Wrestling. There's a 5-star Grand Prix discussion. And speaking of strong style with Steve and Conway and Jeremy Finestone, Scott Edwards is also on that show. They talk Will Ospreay and Mercedes Moné and if they will ever end up in AEW, and if so, what happens to New Japan. And then my show, the Double G Show, I had Jeff and Scott on. We did a bonus show. We talked a little bit about Tony Khan, the leadership, and all that stuff. So this is a supercut. You'll hear a segment from every single regular show on our Patreon feed. If you do enjoy what you're hearing, patreon.com/fightgamemedia. You can subscribe to either the $5 or the $10 tier. In the $10 tier, we're going to start getting ready to do our sort of happy hour hangout. We have a special Patreon room for all the $10 tier folks. We're going to get a hangout with folks from the podcast network and from the subscribers, and also for the $10 tier, you get all of the video that we have. We don't do every show on video. Some of those videos are also on YouTube, but we have specific videos for The Boom and 5-Star, and in some cases the Double G Show, and we'll add them as more people get comfortable doing video, but that's all in the $10 tier. So hopefully you enjoy the supercut. Jeremy Finestone on the edit. We will make some adjustments for future supercuts. I think there's even better ways that we can do this. So also stay tuned for later this week, Scotty Wrestling and 5-Star Joshi Show in the free feed, patreon.com/fightgamemedia.
But have to say that Payback, I will be honest in noting that it was like an extra episode of Raw and SmackDown that you would get free on USA and Fox, with the exception of 2 really strong matches that kind of pushed the show from all right to solid.
Yeah, this was absolutely a big Raw or SmackDown on steroids. But I will say, after the first match, I was like, man, we might be in for something special, because I knew we were going to have at least a couple other good to great matches. Well, it didn't turn out that way. It wasn't a bad show, but yeah, this wasn't what it could have been, especially with the hot start we got off to.
No, not at all. And if you're watching, ladies and gentlemen, please feel free to interact in the chat on YouTube. Give us some great feedback regarding the show. Be interactive with us. We try to respond as we can during the broadcast. But I got to say, I had high hopes for this show after the first match, which blew away expectations. It was the final chapter between Becky Lynch, Trish Stratus inside of a steel cage. And the feud, I will admit, has overstayed its welcome in the last few weeks, but what a finale this was. Becky Lynch was exceptional. Trish Stratus, mother, ageless wonder, my girl from way back when. I've been ride or die for 23 freaking years on and off since my youth. And this woman at 48 years old delivered, dare I say, and I've seen them all just about, the finest performance of her career. And what I love about Trish Scott is the fact that she's not afraid to take the hits, take the bumps. She's willing to get messed up, sell her ass off, put on a show and deliver. And I thought that she did an exceptional job with Becky as they just went balls to the walls, had that crowd on their feet, clapping, popping, chanting, "This is awesome." They had them from start to finish, but my God, what a match. We'll get into the moves later, but your initial thoughts on this match and how it came together down the stretch.
Before I even talk about the match, let me just give WWE has incredible production teams and quality, because that video package that they played before the match made this feel like two generational talents, which they are, but it made it feel like the epic encounter that we ended up getting. When in reality, in hindsight, we both watched Raw weekly. It didn't feel like that leading up to it. And even the SummerSlam match and the matches they had didn't feel like these epic encounters. But that video package, it really set the tone. And then they came out. I thought Trish looked incredible. Her ring gear, everything about the entrances was great. Them inside the steel cage. And you talk about Trish taking the bumps. She took some nasty bumps in this match from the top of the cage, multiple bumps from the top rope. Her head had a huge whelp one from getting smashed into the cage. Let me tell you, I'm a Trish fan, but this match right here, anybody who slanders Trish Stratus, you get the hands off top. No questions asked. You just get the hands, because there will be no slander of her after this match. And I agree with you. This is probably her best outing she's ever had. This was one of the best WWE matches all year so far.
Oh, for sure. Like, I wish somebody would approach me and try to slander Mother Stratus. You're not going to do that. Okay. She has unlimited biscuits at Red Lobster at the table for life. Okay. You understand me? The rarest of exceptions at the table. That is Mother. You will put respect on thy name. She gave tribute to freaking Victoria with the Widow's Peak. Then Scott did the hair move. The hair move then made the cover.
She hit the mannerism when she sat down. She hit the mannerism. And shout out to Michael Cole for not only calling that, but then giving the call back to her and Lita being in the first cage match as well. Like, I thought Michael Cole during this match was fantastic. I thought he was very good. I thought he was spot on when he needed to be. And just little things like those calls right there, I thought it really added to the match.
It really did. And it reminded me those special matches that Trish and Victoria had back in 2002, the Chicago Street Fight. Those ladies went at it physically. They were ahead of their time in so many ways. I thought that was a lovely tribute. Like I said, the hair move like Trish, Queen. Then Becky comes through with the twist of fate in honor of Lita for that very same match. Like, Michael Cole was on the ball with the history lessons. We had a super bulldog off the top rope by Trish to Becky for a near fall. We had a superplex from Becky to Trish in a crazy spot as well. I'm like, my God, this was such an incredible match. The near falls were everything. I was living for the counters, the physicality, Trish's forehead, poor baby. I know she's going to post on the gram like what she went through in this match, but it really came down to the one and only Zoe Stark trying to help her girl out in the clutch, trying to get her through this match or pulling her through the front door, but it was to no avail as Becky Lynch basically told her, get in the ring. I'm going to close this door. It's going to be 2-on-1. I got you. She took care of business, man. A slam to Zoe Stark. And then Trish, who was trying to escape the cage a few times. And when she was hanging by her legs outside the cage, that was insane. I'm like, Trish, girl, don't fall.
Man.
Dear God Almighty, do not fall.
I mean, she doesn't have to do any of this. She didn't have to do any of this. And normally spots like that don't really work, but I thought they did a good job. Becky hit the nice speed when she needed to. And you're talking about the bumps now. She took that. She took a superplex from the top of the cage. She took a manhandle. I mean, like, again, mad respect to Trish for coming back, having this run, putting over she's helped establish not only Becky Lynch as this generation's, the man of this generation, essentially, but let's not sleep on what she's done for Zoe Stark to just establish her with the masses and just kind of that crowd that's maybe not as in tune with NXT and other things like that. So I mean, we can't say enough about what she did in this match. It was incredible.
I mean, listen, Trish, the selling, she took the man slam off the top rope for the win. And then she got in Zoe Stark's face and told her, listen, you let me down. You failed the assignment. Get out of my face. Get out of this cage. And Zoe was trying to be the good person, be the bigger person, but it was to no avail. And then eventually, like the giver that Mother Stratus is, she took the flipping GTS, and then she sold it like a queen to get Zoe over. And I think her final adieu to us will be putting Zoe over, because Trish Stratus is Mother always. And shout out to Dan L, who says that Trish Becky match was an awesome one. Absolutely one of the better matches you'll see in WWE this year, because my God, they left no crumbs.
Yeah, and the Mother Stratus name that you just came up with sounds like a Captain Marvel villain. So if we see that happening in the future, we know they heard it here on the wrap. This again, one of the best matches. It wasn't quite Rhea Charlotte. It wasn't quite that. I think it was definitely on that Bianca Asuka level from WrestleMania. I'm gonna go a solid 4.5 tiers.
I'm going to go there too. 4.5 tiers out of 5. I thought this was an exceptional match. They had the crowd. I will say they had the crowd more so than Rhea and Charlotte in the beginning. They kind of came through WrestleMania down the stretch, but the body of this match, start to finish, was awesome. I tip my cap to both ladies. They should be proud of this match that they put together finally to wrap up this feud. And for Trish Stratus, this run, this match has shown me why I love her down forever, because she really revolutionized women's wrestling. She was ahead of her time. There was no PR. There was no buzz. There were no buzzwords. She just went out there and did it alongside so many others like Victoria, Jazz, Lita, Molly Holly, Gail Kim, Mickie James, to name a few. Always innovating, always being ahead of the curve. And shout out to Fit freaking Finley too, for just giving the ladies a chance, train them up, because he got ridiculed. Like, you can't train them how to wrestle. He did. And look at the results. 23 years later, Trish, Mother Stratus, doing what she needed to do against the man, Becky Lynch.
This was the old Saturday morning or late Friday night at 4 a.m. our time. I woke up at 7, which is pretty good for me, and I actually caught up. I think when the main event started, I was actually caught up. I think maybe, the main event was Max Holloway and the Korean Zombie, and this was a hell of a fight. I saw you had posted that this lived up to expectations, and I would agree. Just a wild brawl. Holloway got the better of it, but Korean Zombie had his moments. Rocked Holloway a couple times. Holloway just knocked him silly at the end, and ended up finishing it. And I think Zombie would never have quit, but the ref had to step in. 23 seconds into the third round, just a crazy fight, awesome fight, and then Zombie retired after the fight.
Yeah, not a surprise about his retirement, but yeah, first 2 rounds were definitely Holloway. Holloway had to drop the zombie in the second, nearly had him choked out, but kind of let go of it. He could have finished him in the second, and it almost seemed like the third started, and the zombie went into the third round with the idea of let's just start throwing. Let's just start throwing in. And Holloway, if you're going to, we've seen Max Holloway, especially at the end of fights, like the Ricardo Lamas fights. If you just want to stand there and trade inside the pocket, he is more than willing to engage. And they did that, and they swang, and they hit the shit out of each other. And Holloway landed a beautiful punch that just dropped the zombie face first to the mat. And there was a lot of face first to the mats on this show.
Yeah, and not all of them immediately resulted in a finish, but
face first to the mat, and then great win for Holloway, and then you had Zombie retire, which not a surprise. There was a lot of talk coming in, and most people thought I'll put you. I'm not the only one, but I expected that Holloway was going to win by finish, and then Zombie was going to retire. This was the fight he wanted. He gets to go out the way, and he talked a lot about the Volkanovski fight. After the Volkanovski fight, about retirement, and he flat out said he wants to be champion, and if he can't be the champion or a top 3 guy, then he doesn't have the passion to continue on, and it's a shame. He's been in a lot of wars, 36 years old, a lot of injuries. And then the biggest shame probably of his career was that mandatory military service that they have in South Korea, because he did that right after he lost that first title fight to Jose Aldo, and it took 4 years off of his career. And that's tough to come back from. Yeah, he came back from, and had that win over Dennis Bermudez in his return. But ever since then, it's just been injuries after injuries after injury after injury. Really limited him to eight fights over what, 8 years. So,
yeah, and 4-4 in that time.
8 fights over 6 years, but yeah.
4-4 in that time, even though, he only fought, I think, what did you say? This was his 7th straight main event. So
11th.
11th. Okay. Wow. So he's fighting, nothing but top guys. And so the 11th straight main event goes back to before he was even
his 11th main event total in his
11th main event. Okay.
Yeah, his 10th straight.
Okay. Yeah. So there you go. That would be going back to before the title fight. Yeah. Poirier would be the first one. That's 2012. That's 11 years ago. So, he had, because of the military service, only 10 fights in the last 11 years, or 11 fights in the last 10 years, I should say, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, again, a great career. You had in your notes here, the, favorite, Max Holloway, or favorite, well, we could do Max Holloway too, but favorite Korean Zombie fights or moments. And for me, I'm always going to think of the, just that crazy, amazing fight he had with Leonard Garcia at WC 48, the prelim, that really, is the one time I think where possibly a prelim fight really made a difference on, in terms of who would buy a pay-per-view. You never know, but I know that's what a lot of people said, because this was on free TV and a lot of people saw it, and it was just an insane war, fight of the year. And he lost by split decision, but I think most people thought he won. Ended up winning the rematch the next year by Twister, with the first UFC Twister in history, which I'm sure would be on a lot of other people's memories of him. What have you got?
I mean, obviously the Leonard Garcia fight, WC 48, that was an incredible fight. And then the Twister, his fight with Dustin Poirier was absolutely incredible. So
yeah.
I remember I was down in Houston at his comeback fight against Dennis Bermudez, and nobody kind of knew what to expect from him, because, he had been out for, 3.5 years, and he comes out and just knocks Bermudez out in the first round, and just looked like the zombie of old, old, and it was incredible. And really, I would say probably the highlight of his career came in December of 2019, going back to South Korea in the UFC in the main event, fighting in South Korea for the first time in 11 years and knocking out Frankie Edgar in the first round. That was probably the highlight of his career right there. And just
if not the Poirier fight, or the 7-second knockout of Mark Hominick at UFC 140.
I think the Frankie Edgar fight is probably the highlight of his career, just because being in South Korea and being
the one we haven't mentioned is that was incredible as well, but not necessarily for him, but the stoppage with 1 second left against Yair Rodriguez, where Yair Rodriguez threw an elbow, like a Hail Mary elbow, and knocked him out. I mean, Rodriguez probably winning that fight anyways, but the fact that he knocked the zombie out with 1 second left was incredible. I would have to assume the latest stoppage in title fight history, right?
It wasn't a title fight, but
so it probably definitely a non-title fight for sure. Then,
I think there's been a couple of fights that ended with like 1 second to go in the fifth round.
Yeah,
not many.
No, but an incredible moment, because it was one of those ones where as soon as it ends, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe this, it just had so many of these moments. And then the last big moment he had, was beating Dan Ige in 2 years ago, which I think a lot of people probably thought was a bit of an upset. It was basically a coin flip fight, but he was a slight underdog going in. But yeah, just a great career. Never got the title, but he did have that one title shot.
Two title shots.
Yeah, the first one against Jose Aldo, and then again against Alexander Volkanovski last year. So that's I'm sure for him too, to be able to headline a card in Southeast Asia one more time, and against a guy who a lot of people would be on the list of, some people would say the best featherweight of all time, probably definitely top 3 in Max Holloway. And Holloway's just basically now waiting for someone to beat Alexander Volkanovski so he can get another title shot, essentially.
I mean, look at if you look at the Zombies, like his UFC opponent list, I mean, it's the cream of the crop. Yeah, I mean, we started Leonard Garcia, Mark Hominick, Dustin Poirier, Jose Aldo, Dennis Bermudez, Yair Rodriguez, Renato Moicano, Frankie Edgar, Brian Ortega, Dan Ige, Alexander Volkanovski, Max Holloway. Like, that's an incredible resume right there. Whether he won or lost, that's
probably they're all like top 15 of all time. Those like in terms of featherweights, and he fought them all. Just an incredible career.
I'm going to go on record, and I know it wasn't a UFC fight, but the Leonard Garcia fight should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and I mean, that doesn't mean it's not eligible, right? Like they can put it in if they want to.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah. But I mean,
it definitely is. Like,
Zombie needs some recognition in that Hall of Fame. He's not a Hall of Fame fighter.
See, I would put it this way: if they said he was in the Hall of Fame, I don't think I'd argue. Like,
yeah, but I mean, when people are borderline, when people are arguing that Donald Cerrone shouldn't be in it,
well, they're idiots.
Like that, then if you're going to make that argument, then Zombie shouldn't be in it, even though like one of the most popular fighters, one of the most exciting fighters ever, there should be some recognition somewhere. If you just had one of those wings, but like for like exciting fighters,
maybe they could do like an international wing. If they ever had an international wing, maybe he would be like, I mean, he'd be way up
if
there.
You had one of those, here's the wing of exciting fighters that aren't quite Hall of Famers. That'd be a place for guys like him and Matt Brown and people like that. So
if he was like a couple years younger, he could be in that BMF list too. Fighting all those guys. He'd have to a little on the smaller end of some of them, but certainly one of those guys that every time he fights, you're getting an exciting fight. And I honestly can't think of a fight that he's had that didn't live up to the hype in some way.
I don't think he had a bad fight at all.
No. I mean, he had some short ones, but I mean, they certainly weren't bad. And anytime he lost, it was memorable.
Yeah.
Like there was no. This is actually. Well, let me look back. Is this the quickest? No. Okay, he lost to George Roop at 1:30 of the second round. In his second WEC fight. But other than that, this was the quickest loss he ever had in the UFC, and it was in the third round. So one of the toughest guys to put away too, really.
Yeah.
Never lost a decision. I guess he lost to Garcia, obviously not what I mentioned, but most of his wins were by finish.
No, Ortega, or he lost to Ortega by decision.
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, sorry, my bad. But yeah, just an incredible fight.
The CM Punk investigation has come to an end, Kevin.
It has. And so has
How'd that work
the CM
out?
Punk era. Not so well for.
As it turns out, he did not make all in 2024. Who
No.
saw that coming?
Was there a bet on that?
Seems
Somebody
like
had
there
a
was.
bet.
Seems like
would
it.
he be on the next All Out? Somebody.
I mean,
won a
never.
bet.
Honest to God, as much as Tony Khan loves him, that's not out of the question right now.
No.
We'll just have to wait a year. Anything, absolutely.
I think
anything
if
could
there's
happen.
one thing that's clear this week, it's that Tony Khan does indeed love CM Punk.
Yes, very
Because
much.
You could tell that this was a very painful thing for him to have
Yeah.
to do. That finally he listened to advice of counsel, I think, and probably, who knows, maybe a possible revolt from the production staff or wrestlers, or I think is
Probably a little
this was
bit of
something
both.
he had to do, not something he wanted to do.
Apparently, CM Punk attacked Tony Khan. As Dave Meltzer said, he reported, what was it? Lunged at him, and Dave has said it was much, much more than that.
Yes.
And that he was being very kind
Yes.
to CM Punk. So not only did he physically assault Jungleman, the Jungleman, he has the
Yes.
head of CM Punk on his mantle. He's the Jungleman now. Not
That's
only
right.
did he,
we were texting. Yeah.
yeah,
Last
not
night
only,
we were discussing the possibility of commissioning a painting for Mel Coleman.
oh my God, if we all pool our money, everyone, the three of you, by the way, you three people in the chat, let us know who you are, let us know where you're watching from, et cetera, in the comments right now. I'd love to know who's here with us. I think we definitely need to reach out to Mel Coleman. I think we can make it a group effort and acquire, and it'll be a little like the Stanley Trophy. It can stay at everyone's house 1 week out of the
we'll
year.
make an NFT of it. I won't confirm or deny whether or not I went to a couple of AI image generators to see if they would accept the prompt. Jungle Boy Jack Perry holding the severed head of CM Punk while drinking a glass of wine.
Oh my God.
I was not successful because apparently there's something of AI not wanting to.
Perhaps he could be doing
portraits
that
of
while
severed
sitting
heads
on
of
a
real people.
Perhaps he could be doing that while sitting on a real glass table. Hey, Sam Shipman, how are you doing?
Yay!
I'm really disappointed that I am going to have to watch my language while talking about the firing of CM Punk. I've realized I think AEW would be much better if they'd never hired him. And I'm dead serious. Now,
That's a really good question. Okay, yeah.
I think CM Punk has taken the air out of the room on so many wrestlers.
Yeah.
I think he's likely affected the careers of wrestlers he's not liked. And AEW in the past 12 months or the past 14 months or so has had two of their greatest events of all time. All Out last year and All In this year are two of their greatest events. And we left both those events not talking about them at all. Those huge moments in both those pay-per-views got no traction because of CM Punk.
Yeah.
And it was all we talked about for months and months when we could have been talking about all these wrestlers who are coming into their own, like Ricky Starks, like MJF. There's so many. There's too many to name. But we were all distracted by Punk. Now, I do think you couldn't have launched Rampage without him, and clearly you probably couldn't have gotten Collision off the ground without him. And I'm sure there's going to be all this talk from all these CM Punk loyalists about how Collision fell off a cliff as soon as CM Punk got fired. which it's going to, because everyone next Saturday is going to be watching college football. Period.
Right.
Mm-hmm. I was watching All Out tonight. All in. God, I can't even keep it straight. I was watching All Out tonight and LSU Florida State, which was a bigger ass kicking than Orange Cassidy got. That's what happened to LSU.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm a little steamed over that. But I truly think he took so much away from so many different people, whether that was intentional or not, that I think AEW might be further along in developing their own stars, which they clearly need to do. And I think they have done a good job, but I think it could be at the next level if it weren't for the signing of Cornelius Michael Punk.
What? So let's look at what he did bring to the table. So like you mentioned, the timing
massive
of him arriving, he brought in massive viewers for Rampage when it started.
Mm-hmm.
That was a short-term thing. Rampage became a C-level, possibly even a D-level show at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Theoretically, he was one of the anchors that got them Collision.
Right.
Don't know if they wouldn't have gotten Collision if he wasn't there or what, but clearly he was considered an asset for that.
Right.
They got good ratings for a while,
but in recent episodes,
more down to earth, what you would expect on a Saturday night wrestling show, and are about to start getting their butt kicked.
Yes.
Who has? Let's see. Creatively, what did he bring to the table? So he brought
some good things that I hope they keep. Actually,
he brought some good things. I think his creative influence on Collision was really good. Collision was my favorite show of the week. He had probably my second favorite feud of all time.
Which one was that?
Which was MJF CM Punk. Only behind Ric Flair and Terry Funk to me.
Right. Depending on the bidding war of 2024, maybe we get a resolution to that. Maybe we'll
get a rematch. But I thought that was a fantastic match, an all-timer. I think it really elevated MJF. Would MJF have found some other way to be elevated if Punk wasn't there? Probably.
I think so.
Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say. that in recent weeks, there's been reports that he's been unhappy because there've been a number of segments which have popped higher ratings than his segments.
Yeah.
Either way, go ahead, because we need to get to all out pretty soon.
So that's what I've been trying to do, is sort of like what's the legacy? What did he bring? And I think in the wash, you're probably right. He hurt more than he helped overall, because what he brought to the table was a couple of things that no one else could have done, that probably they could have done without if they had to.
Yeah. Or even perhaps they could have signed him to a couple of short-term deals, a couple of 3 or 4 match deals. And you could have avoided all this and gotten the good things out of CM Punk without having him as a weekly cancer inside the locker room. My last thing I'll say is no one in pro wrestling history has ever literally single-handedly split the locker room like CM Punk. He literally took them to another show and kept everyone else off that show. A literal split of the locker room.
Yeah.
And
it's really weird. I had this thought. I sent Garrett a message tonight earlier. I just had this thought, and I didn't really want to post it publicly, but I'll go ahead and say it right here on YouTube.
Oh, man.
So tonight's show was kind of cathartic. It felt like kind of almost joyous in a way. That was like Punk free. It was still weird, this weird thing where you have these Chicago stars, that are so associated with Punk because of the Chicago thing. But it was like this release almost. It was like last night was Collision, like everyone was just sort of stunned and punch drunk basically. Tonight it was like, you know what? We love this company. We love this show. And you could almost feel the Chicago crowd like let it go and start to have fun and just, kind of get it all out of their system. So it occurred to me what this feels like right now is election night, or at least like the first week of, when the election was over in 2020, not to get political, and Joe Biden won. And the people that voted for Joe Biden were like, oh my gosh, he's finally out. We voted him out, right?
Yep.
The election's over. The guy's gone. Well, we still have a riot at the Capitol and a bunch of criminal investigations coming.
Right.
So that's what I feel like's going on with Punk. Is like the election's over, the guy's been voted out, but I still feel like there's this whole insurrection and like riots and metaphor here.
A lot on Twitter.
There's going to be a whole
On
mess
X.
to come. A whole mess to come.
I'm
It's
sure
gonna
there
get
will
really
be.
ugly. I think this is going to get really ugly. We're going to be talking about this for 2 years.
I'm sure there'll be a lawsuit. There'll be a million things.
Yeah.
But tonight felt like a more, even though it felt like an old school AEW show, is what it felt like. And that's what we needed right now. And I really enjoy it.
The culture that Tony Khan has set in this company, in some ways. Don't get me wrong, people are free and have agency and all that other stuff. Noted. But Jack Perry did that on the biggest show in this company's history and in wrestling history. Yeah, it was a pre-show. Yeah, it was on YouTube. In what world do you think that that's okay? Especially, and look, here's where I get into the hierarchy a bit, because there are guys who can get away with things like that, and there are guys who can't get away with things like that, and life's not fair. And there are people who can punch you backstage, and there are people who can't punch you backstage, and that's not fair either. But
John Jones can take steroids and fight again, and most people can't.
Look, we don't want a Vince environment, but we want an environment where there's a power structure that's respected. And the whole reason CM Punk is with this company is because a guy like Jack Perry main evented the last pay-per-view and crapped the bed.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where I get a little miffed at the, well, if CM Punk weren't here, we'd all be work friends and we'd be able to get along. It's, no. Because there will be another Punk. I mean, there'll be an Andre, and everybody will put it on them. And we are still suffering the effects of not punishing Hangman Page for doing the same thing that Jack Perry just did.
Exactly. I'm glad you brought that up, because you said something about fostering an environment where you think it's okay to do something like this. And to me, I'll go back to the Hangman comment. What makes Hangman think that he can say what he said and get away with it? Well, the environment that's fostered there. The fact that Bryan Danielson said a similar thing to CM Punk. Eddie Kingston said a similar thing to CM Punk on camera. Except apparently either those were okay, or those guys are big enough stars that they could get away with it, and Hangman, at least in the eyes of CM Punk, isn't. So he respects Eddie Kingston on some level. He respects Bryan Danielson. He doesn't respect Hangman. So when Hangman says the same thing, now Punk's got a problem with it. Meanwhile, or it was okay ahead of time and it wasn't okay for Paige, but maybe Paige doesn't know that. These guys are watching. They don't know what's going on behind the scenes. Perry just thinks, oh, everyone's taking a shot at Punk. I'll do it too.
Yeah, well, yeah, and I like the Elite, so I'm going to take a shot at Punk too.
Why can Punk do a promo after burying Hangman Page, saying you can't sell action figures, but I can't go on camera and say this because he's CM Punk and you're Jack Perry?
Exactly. And that's a good point. And from Punk's perspective, and here's where I have a little bit of sympathy for him. Punk came from that WWE system where people trembled in fear if you pissed off Vince. And so his attitude is somewhat rebellious in that kind of environment. Here, where he wants structure so that he could be punk rock in this thing, there is no structure. This is a hippie artist community type of thing where it's like, oh, what's the ending you'd like? What's the ending you'd like? Let's sit down and talk about it together and flesh this out. Let's have everybody do whatever they want here and go overtime, which has been a problem in shows, et cetera, et cetera. Let everybody get their stuff in and be happy, and Tony will be happy. And look, I am not the biggest Effie fan in the world, but I love that video that's making the rounds right now about him saying that people are working a little bit towards star ratings as opposed to emotional connection of match. And I was like, praise Jesus, because that's AEW.
I like
right
Effie.
now.
I like Effie.
I'm not his biggest fan. I really am not, but I understand the people who like him.
I like what he does, and I like the tag team with what's her name? I know the team name is supposed to be
it's not
Alley
Catch.
Catch. Alley Catch. Yeah.
Okay, Alley Catch.
And then they have the third one, Dark something. Somebody help me out here.
Kid,
it's another
Kid Bandit or no?
No.
I don't know.
I think they've tagged up with them. Too.
Yeah.
But no. What I wanted to say, I thought of something. Everybody loves Tony Khan, right? Great boss. Everybody loves him. Nobody loves Vince, right?
Right.
I mean, some people do, but for the most part, everybody doesn't like Vince. Who do you think people respected more?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is well, people respect Tony without him being a jerk about it. Do they?
I don't think so.
Or do they know he's the guy with the bank book?
I'm sure some do. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's some.
I think the level of respect is I want to do a good match for Tony so that Tony's happy and this company is successful.
Whereas in WWE, it's like, I want to do a good match because I don't want to get fired. Dark Sheik, thank you, Anthony.
It's not necessarily I want to do a good match. It's I need to do everything Vince has told me to do out there and to hit my time and to hit my angles and to hit my reaction here, et cetera, et cetera. Or Vince is going to chew my ass out when I come out through Gorilla. And if there's any shenanigans in the locker room, Vince is taking care of that crap real quick. If guys in the back don't do it themselves. And I don't necessarily want wrestler court. But you're sitting around, you're going, where's the guy that's getting these dopes in line? And it should be Punk in some ways. And I think Punk's trying to do that. The problem is
they don't respect Punk either.
They're going to go to mom because dad's being mean to them. That's what it is.
Samoa Joe should be that guy. Like, I don't know if he wants
I agree.
To. Or John Moxley.
Arn Anderson. Moxley. Well, I guess Arn. And see, I don't think they respect Arn because he's too old.
Right.
See,
I think they respect Mox. I think they respect Joe. Danielson for sure. I think that everybody probably respects, but I don't think Danielson's that guy. He just doesn't seem like.
But you can't be. But you also can't be that guy and be working with people.
No,
you can't be the enforcer. No. And then also, I mean, they. I had a job like that once. They made me manager, but they made me the guy to fire everybody. Oh. And then after peak season, they said you gotta go back and work with those people. I was like, are you crazy?
This is typically how Tony will answer things that he does not want to answer. Just from my experience with him, being on media calls, being the person to ask questions. We all know about my experience asking him about the Thunder Rosa situation and how that went. He was actually much more calm here. That was the first time he was really rude to me on that call about that. But this is typically. And I know, and on top of this, Tony was also dealing with the other things that had happened, backstage. So on top, like, I'm trying to give him some grace, but this is typically how he responds to questions relating to the women's division, or just questions he does not want to answer, which I can understand. I expect answers like this from him now, and typically, like, as I did get to ask him a question on the media call this week. I was the one who asked about Wrestle Dream. I've seen a lot of people referencing it. That was my question. I asked him about women being involved with Wrestle Dream. I was gonna ask about Athena, but Bill Pritchard went before I did, and he was talking about ROH, and so in that, he ended up answering my question about Athena. And so I was like I had a couple other questions, and I was like, well, do I ask this? I was like, I know if I ask this, then I'm going to get just a generic answer. And I was like, but if I ask, so I went with the Wrestle Dream question because I knew I would get an actual response. And so we'll get to, that too, but I clearly have my thoughts about this, but I'll let you, what is your response to what Tony Khan said to Lyric?
I think it's great politics and great business. I don't like the insinuation that he can't like it's the women would slow down. I don't like the answer. I mean, there's kind of the women would have slowed the car down answer in there that it had a very was very passive aggressive. I know from hearing that there was something of an exodus to the bathroom during that match, which continues to be a problem. And it's like, is that because people don't like women's wrestling, or is it because women's wrestling isn't being booked properly?
I think there's
those
things,
answer,
but I also would say they've been trained that way because WWE has trained people to think women's matches are not important, that they are the bathroom break, they are worthy of only 3 minutes. And I feel like that's a mindset that some people just cannot break out of, no matter how good the wrestling is in front of them. And it also, that mindset of how WWE has treated women in the past, I think emboldens people. If you saw the day before, there was a question where some fan asked asked Karen Jarrett who was better in bed, Kurt or Jeff Jarrett, and they asked it in front of Jeff Jarrett.
That's rude and none of your business.
Yes, and he's younger, probably late 20s,
I mean, I
early
guess
30s, but
wrestling,
I feel like some of that is because it's ingrained in their brain that they can treat women they think of women in wrestling as these objects, as these things that they can act like. Who the hell would ask something like that in a normal basis? And I'm not blaming all of WWE, but I feel like sometimes that is ingrained in them because they were ingrained to treat women. They were in bra and panty matches. They were in mud cello matches. They were and all of these things. They were given 3 minutes. They were in scantily clad clothes all the time. And so I think for some people, that's ingrained in them to think that's okay. So now it's also ingrained, oh, this is a women's match. Time to go to the bathroom. Time to get my snacks. And obviously in a pay-per-view where you have things happening, like the one thing about WWE is they have like their 8-minute packages in between. So that gives you a little leeway. All out, AEW is just boom, 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 right into the next thing. And so you could be in line in a different match and still miss a women's match because of that. But so there is a lot of factors, but sometimes I think for some fans that is in their mindset because WWE trained them for 30 years that women are not important. Women's matches don't matter.
Did something that WWE did this with Ronda Rousey when they brought her in. So there was all these. They had actually women's storylines that they had built.
Yeah,
they had a whole bunch of stories.
They made it look like they cared.
Yeah, but regardless, they had a whole thing going on where they had a whole stream of stories, and then it was like, okay, well, Ronda Rousey needs to be written in here, so we're gonna write a really rushed thing, and we're gonna put her in here, and she's gonna win the belt. And everything that we've done for the past year doesn't matter at all. It's completely irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
And so regardless of how you feel about how the women have been booked up to this point, Saraya has not been someone who has been in that level of contention for the belt. And they did this match to get the belt on Saraya in the UK. And that's fine. I get it. If you're doing a feature match and everything else.
Right.
But why should I care about this match? Because it disregards a lot of storytelling, good or bad. It disregards a lot of the storytelling you've been telling.
Right.
I know there's the Tony turned on her thing, and they, for once and for all, they're broken up. But it wasn't.
They're not broken up.
But it was very much about that match was there to put the belt on a British wrestler.
Right. Exactly.
Specifically,
they were giving her the feel good moment because she missed 5 years. She missed 5 years. So we've talked about it a few times once the match was made. We knew the reason the belt was put on Shida was because Saraya couldn't beat Tony for the title. So they had to make Shida a transitional champion. I think it's bullshit. I think putting it on Saraya is the wrong decision for multiple reasons. I get that they were doing it for the moment, but I think it was the wrong choice.
You can't set people up for failure and then say, well, we tried it and they failed.
Right, which is what
Well,
they
it's
keep
like,
doing.
well, you tried it, but you did it at a time when, like, especially with the last, like, what, 3 or 4 weeks, where it's like, okay, we're gonna have all women's main events, and then we're gonna like show you that the show falls off when the women are,
Right.
and maybe that's legitimate, and maybe there's something to it, or maybe it's
Well,
just
and-
that you're. I mean,
it's a lot of we've talked about this a lot too. It's a lot of reactionary booking, doing the main events to do the main events, to be like, here, shut up now. What else are you going to complain
Well,
about?
if you
I'm
don't
doing what
want
you
women on your product, don't have women on your product. Or if you don't want them on AEW, just put them on ROH. But don't like. Hey, it's one of my favorite things that I've been saying since 2016 is don't pee on my leg and tell me it's raining. It's an old one, and it makes the hat look silly now. See, this hat is multifunctional, but that's where I'm at with it. It was very. All he did was regurgitate Willow's word, or I'm sorry, I keep doing it. Lyric's words to her, and he was essentially like, and you said it, and you did, and he did. That's a classic. Like, I went to school for politics and journalism.
Oh, it's definitely a classic.
And I've done. And again,
like
a couple of years, I've been like in business mode.
Many times. Like, that's how he answers questions.
Perfect politicking.
No, it's exactly what that is.
But it doesn't tell me anything about where you stand.
He was dodging the question, as somebody mentioned, and like because I went back to the thread that I wrote about it, because I was like, of course this had to happen after we've had a show, and by the time we get to this, it's already going to be a week. Like, I was like, I want to talk about this now.
It didn't matter.
I was heated just because it feels like, so to give a little bit of context with the night that this happened, the 1 8-minute and 44-second match, NWA 75. NWA is a train wreck. They had the same night as All In. They had 2 women's title matches. The women main evented the first night, because NWA 75 was 2 nights. They main evented. Camille defended her title again, and she got the main event spot. And of course, I knew the women were not going to main event all in. I was not asking for that, but we've talked about it before. AEW is still the only company who has not had women main event a pay-per-view. ROH only main evented a pay-per-view because Mark Briscoe got injured, and then the fans had to beg Tony to put Athena and Willow in the spot that they earned. So we only got it because we complained enough about it. They were like, fine. And then it was a whole mess. They didn't say it was the main event. They said it was going to be Claudio. And then they were like, then halfway through the show, they're like, it's a double main event. Then they were like, well, the women are closing. So it was like pulling teeth just to get them to even admit.
And it was still a weird bait and switch that they ended up. I mean, whatever. I mean, to me, that still felt like a weird bait and switch. That's my personal opinion. I'm not saying Tony was out to get me, but in my opinion, that is classic. I mean,
they did. They promoted that pay-per-view as Claudio main eventing to get people to buy the pay-per-view, because they didn't think that telling people that Athena was main eventing would sell pay-per-views, when I know for a fact that one of my friends did not buy that pay-per-view because he thought Athena was not main eventing. And then because he was told by ROH that Claudio was main eventing and not Athena. And so he did not buy the pay-per-view. And then, so they didn't think Athena could sell pay-per-view. So they said it was Claudio. And then as the show was going, they were like, oh, it's going to be Athena.
I'll make it simple. How are you enjoying the 5-Star Grand Prix so far?
I mean, it's hard not to be enjoying the 5-Star Grand Prix right now, right? Like, it's been we're coming into the tournament, we're expecting great things. Like, we're hyping it up. Oh, this is going to be an amazing tournament. It's going to blow the G1 out of the water and all of that jazz. We're hyping it up. But now that we're actually in the crux of it, like, we're pretty much at the halfway mark. Well, we are at the halfway mark as of recording this. There's not really much to complain about, is there? Like, it's been a really good tournament. Even the weaker nights generally has 1 or 2 things that you can take out of and go, even if I wasn't completely enthralled by this happened or that happened. And you can't say that about a tournament that's going for over 2 months and not be impressed.
Yeah, it's been It's been overall fantastic. I've seen some people calling an all-timer tournament, and we still have a month to go. So I'll hold my comments until then. But we're on a good pace for this to be one of, if not the best, 5 stars, and that's without Saya Kamatani, mind you.
Yeah,
that's the crazier part. That was like 9 great matches just automatically taken out, and if rumors are believed, 10 great matches on her behalf taken out. But we have a lot to talk about. We're gonna do an update on the 5-Star Grand Prix. Had 2 shows this past weekend. This upcoming weekend they have 2 shows, including the 5-Star Special in Hiroshima, which is undoubtedly one of the most stacked cards of the year, just because they can. Yeah. We're gonna also talk the Sendai Girls big show in Nagata pay-per-view, which is featuring 1 Stardom talent, 1 kind of half Stardom talent. I don't really know what to call Kyrie these days, and
WWE talent.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Until she steps into that door, I'm not calling her WWE talent, though. That sounds like a crime. For me personally. But I'm happy for her. I hope she has as much success as Io is having right now.
I hope her dreams of being booked by Triple H actually come true.
I do too. I mean, he treated her well once upon a time in NXT, so I understand where she's coming from. She'll do fine. But we're gonna kick off our show with Seedling, and I had 1 guest set for this show. Things changed, so thankfully Trent has come on. I will have that guest hopefully next week, which is just as packed show with all the pay-per-view stuff, so won't be too much of a miss. But the reason they wanted to come on was for this 1 match. And that match was Arisa Nakajima defending the Beyond the Sea Championship against Sari. Sari, of course, has just been phenomenal since walking back into our lives and leaving the schoolgirl outfit and whatever WWE else planned for her behind. And somehow it got better. Like this past Friday, it just got better. And I saw the match. I saw the billing. I was like, oh, it's going to be great, obviously. I saw the preview tags. They had 2 great preview tags, including the main event of Surrealism Chapter 2. But this match somehow still managed to exceed my expectations. So much so that I said to multiple people, and Trent, this might shock you, that Suri might be my favorite wrestler going right now. Not Nemayu.
Hold on.
I'm not kidding. Only because I look forward to every single match she has.
Mm-hmm.
And this match, I was like, she might be the best. She's absolutely the best wrestler to ever walk out of WWE. And what I mean by that is she had very limited rust.
Yeah.
And I know people will be like, well, she didn't really wrestle that much, but she was there for 2 years.
That's how you build rust.
Right. That's still a lot of rust. And she is now undoubtedly one of my favorite wrestlers to watch. I think she's pretty much everyone's. If you're able to witness what she's doing, she's very determined by the scene. I knew you were going to attack me on that, but it's okay.
Hey, I know how much of a fan you are of Mayu Watani. And what you're saying to me is
better
than Sari is higher on your list.
I always have to clear that up. It's like, okay, after Mayu. I just try to if you know me, I think we can all just accept Mayu's here and then it's everyone else. But I love watching Sari big matches and she's having a lot right now. So that's a lot of fun. But let's talk about the match itself. Arisa Nakajima came into this match as a dominant champion after winning the title back from Hiroyo Matsumoto at the end of 2022. And heading into this match, I wasn't fully convinced Suri was going to win for sure, mostly because she had just won the preview tag previously that they had with the most recent one. They've had 2. They've had 2 different preview tags. They have one in Seedling, then one at Surrealism. But with getting that win, and Suri hasn't really booked herself to be this all dominant, strong wrestler as she should. She could easily do that. I don't think anyone would bat an eye, but she's been very willing to lose here and there. So I wasn't like, oh, she's winning, no doubt, we move on, because I think a lot of us also are thinking, well, there's going to be a time somewhere down the line where we do see her in a Stardom ring, hopefully against Mayu Iwatani. You know, that's the big what if match that has a graphic and all, but we never got it. But she did capture the win here in one of my favorite matches of the year. It was violent, it was physical. The final 10 minutes of this match are some of my favorite 10 minutes of the year. There's been a lot of great wrestling this year. You know, not just in Joshi. But this match for me in terms of Joshi, it's just the steel cage match probably ahead of it right now. And that's because the steel cage match, if you have that connection like I did, like yourself, it's a different level. But if you're looking for just a pure pro wrestling Joshi match, I don't think it gets much better than this year.
Yeah, this is very much the prototypical. If you are describing Joshi wrestling to someone, this match kind of fits the bill. It's not overly theatrical and flourishy. It's just a very basic story, but it's a basic story that's told extremely well by two, let's be honest, two veterans in the industry, even though Sarai is still very young, who just know how to pace a match, to execute all the high spots well, and just weave everything together. You know, you start off nice and slow, sort of finding each other's grooves. You've got Sarai doing some great arm work on Arisa Nakajima. You've got those brutal double stomps on from the top rope to the apron, then top rope down to the floor. And then it just kind of every now and again, they just kind of stop and do the strong style stuff, building up into those 10 minutes that you talk about. There's so much to digest here that's just done brilliantly. You can come in and not know Sarai and not know Arisa Nakajima, and you're just going to walk away with two new favorites. And if you know Arisa and you know Sarai, it just kind of confirms that.
Yeah, I've seen some people prior to this match kind of they thought Sarai wasn't fully back to form, and I was like, okay, sure. If you left this match thinking anything besides her being back to form, you just might not want to watch Joshi. At that point, it's I don't know what you're looking for, because the excitement of her, because in those final few minutes, not even the 10 minutes, where, she was hitting all the suplexes and just going, and then Arisa is able to turn her around. You just I've seen enough Arisa Nakajima matches to know, it's over. Damn it. God damn it. And then Sarai, it's another one, another headbutt. She's just all right, that's enough. And then gets the win. Like you said, prototypical Joshi type match that if you hear Joshi and you've seen it explained or you've watched old Joshi, this is very up to that par. It's very it's everything I think you want out of the Joshi independents, especially these days. And what Sarai is doing right now since coming back, it's must see. Yeah, to me, her appearing on AEW kind of eased any thoughts of her ever going back, or at least anytime soon for me. Because, I think, and I said this earlier, but she has so many things she still wants to do, right? She wants to have that Tokyo Dome match. She's going to have that Tokyo Dome match. I'm willing to put money on that. I'm not a betting man, but if I was, I would put money on her being at Wrestle Kingdom and wrestling. They're setting up that match with Julia. Obviously, that is I think that's as locked in as any match could be for someone that hasn't wrestled in months. And I think this is just good news. Now, I said this, and I'll say it again. If you're bringing in Mercedes Moné into your product, if you're AEW, everything has to change, because you're paying her top money. She's not going to be the top paid woman in the women's division. No, she's going to be top 5 in the company if you're bringing her in any form. So you're going to have to give her the time to tell whatever story she's going to tell. We know, or we've at least heard rumors that her match at Forbidden Door was supposed to be with Saraya, who is the current AEW Women's World Champion. Saraya. It's starting to click in my head of why Mercedes may be coming in sooner than not. I mean, Tony Khan just said that he would like to have Mercedes Moné on this Wrestle Dream Antonio Inoki show that they're doing. Well, it says tribute to Antonio Inoki. I don't know if it's really an Antonio Inoki show.
It's a little puzzling. It's a little puzzling. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, because it's I can't imagine everything working out for him on that show or anything. But yeah, we'll talk about that, like you said. So
yeah, well, it's not like anything goes wrong at AEW shows anyway. But we did have All In on Sunday. It was very, very impressive. 81,035 paid. It looks like that is a real number, and it would be an all-time paid attendance record. The only shows that would beat it would be those North Korean shows where people were literally ordered to attend and it wasn't paid attendance. But 81,035 they put in that building, and one of the featured matches, it was a New Japan talent for now, and it was Will Ospreay who faced and defeated Chris Jericho. Now, the thing about this is, Will had a busy weekend. He was going through a couple of different shows, Rev Pro the night before, which we're going to talk about that show because it featured a lot of New Japan talent, and this one in front of 81,000. They put him over, and I mentioned when Power Bombshells were doing the preview of it that it's a heck of a way to woo a guy that you're interested in signing, is putting him over on one of the biggest shows of the year over one of your biggest stars. He has all but said he is leaving. He hasn't said it officially, but all indications are that he is headed to AEW when his contract with New Japan runs out at the end of the year. And there are other signs that things are aligning in this direction. You mentioned Wrestle Dream, a new AEW pay-per-view that is taking place October 1st against All Logic and Reason. And I say that because, first of all, it's the Sunday night football game that night. I believe is the Jets and the Chiefs. So you have Aaron Rodgers in his new home with the Jets taking on the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. So you basically have a world heavyweight title fight there in the NFL. That's going on the night they're doing this. They are calling it a tribute to Antonio Inoki, which might just be the coincidence that it's October 1st and Inoki passed away a year ago on October 1st. But, of course, as soon as he says that, the speculation begins there's going to be a heavy Japanese presence on this show. Except
I was going to say he didn't help that today in the media call. He pretty much said he hopes that there is.
Well, that would be lovely, except temper your expectations on that. And I'm speaking to anybody who thinks that that's going to happen, because there are shows booked for October 1st. New Japan has a show that has the complete card listed, and Tony likes to use who? Tomohiro Ishii, Suzuki, Tanahashi. All of them are booked. Let's see, who else is it? Shingo Takagi, Yota Tsuji, Shota Umino, Naito, Hiromu, Okada, all of Just Five Guys, all of Bullet Club. There are three people who are of consequence who aren't on the card for October 1st. It's Will Ospreay and Bishimo, Yoshihashi and Hiroki Goto. Ospreay is on the early Road to Destruction tour, and then he has a match at Destruction in Kobe. Then he's not on the house show tour leading up to Destruction in Ryogoku. There are other members of the United Empire on that tour, but after Kobe, Will kind of drops off the lineups for a little while. It seems probable to me that he will be at Wrestle Dream. That seems like too much of a coincidence that he's not. I don't know about Bishamon. They've had Yoshihashi and Goto on AEW shows before, but again, nothing announced yet. Those are really the only three of any consequence, Scott, that aren't booked that day. And you were saying, as far as the female presence goes, Stardom has a show that day too, right?
Stardom not only has a show that day in Cork and Hall, the same location that New Japan has their show that day, but they have the 5-Star Grand Prix finals 24 hours before.
Yeah. So I mean, who? So again, we're talking people of consequence that aren't in the 5-star. There are a few because Stardom's roster is so deep. But you tweeted out a picture of Tekla earlier. If someone's going to go from Stardom and be on this show somewhere in some form, even if it's just maybe face an AEW star like Athena or something like that and lose, or Statlander or something, Tekla would probably be a choice. Who's somebody that they could spare for the night.
That would be my top choice. I think it makes the most sense in terms of someone who not only speaks English and can kind of build that match a little bit, just by sending in a promo. But she's obviously very talented, and she's not part of the tournament. So, you don't have to worry about that. I saw some people be like, well, Suzuki, technically, her match is canceled on the tournament night because of Saya Kamatani. But that doesn't matter because she's still going to be in contention probably on that night. So you're going to have her on location. And it to me, it's just, it doesn't work out. And I feel like sometimes Tony says these things without actually knowing, which is a problem. It's a problem because I think people's hopes get up. That's why he said, I'd like to have Mercedes Moné because she checks both boxes and we can just, move on. Right. I just want to say on Ospreay, before we kind of move away from that, I'm not saying it's contract tampering, but the nicest thing I've ever seen someone do for a person that doesn't work for their company is give them a premier singles match in an 80,000 fan arena in their home country and a win. That's probably the nicest thing I've ever seen happen. So I'm not saying it's tampering, but it's a very, 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 very nice gesture ahead of his free agency. But I look forward to MJF versus Will Ospreay and at Revolution or something because I can't imagine him staying just because I think they're gonna get the Brinks truck, they're gonna get another Brinks truck, and then be like, hey, you want this? Here you go. And I can't imagine him saying no.
So what are we going to do here? I had this idea, and I knew Jeff would have been very aware of the time period from his wrestling fandom. All Out is this coming weekend. All In just happened, and Tony Khan decided to use Dynamite and Collision as a bridge, one show each as a bridge between two pay-per-views. And this hadn't been done in quite a long time. I want to say WWE has done pay-per-views 2 weeks apart in the 2010s time frame is my guess, but not a week apart. UFC had, I think, 2 weeks apart. They may have done a week apart at one point, just because of scheduling or whatever. But in pro wrestling, this hasn't happened on a big scale since 1991, Survivor Series and this Tuesday in Texas. And so I kind of want to go back, just go back to that time, talk about why they did it, talk about why they hadn't done it since. And based off of everything that we've heard from Tony, it sounds like he wants this desperately to be tradition. He wants to run Wembley every year, and then the following week, which is Labor Day, he wants to run All Out because that has been their date for All Out has been that Labor Day weekend. Jeff, you're showing a facial dismay about this idea, and I gather some of it is frustration from what you saw on Dynamite as the bridge to All Out.
Yes. As I said on Dynamite this week, Tony's going to need 15 stories in order to do this. And we've barely been able to have a pay-per-view with 4 stories or angles that have because his thing is booking great matches. And then 2 weeks beforehand, oh yeah, we're having a pay-per-view. Better build this a bit. And I am actually going to be very interested in how Chicago's business does.
Mm-hmm.
Especially after next year, because this used to be a travel show.
Yep.
This second one, and it ain't gonna be a travel show no more. I don't think. I think people might go for the Wembley show if given the choice and the disposable income. But Tony runs Chicago a lot as well, and I'm wondering if those later shows, like say Thanksgiving week, which he always runs on that time, I'm wondering if those houses start to see a noticeable decline after this. But yeah.
So history would tell us that that's kind of how wrestling works in general. AEW's fan base, as far as pay-per-views are concerned, seem to be very loyal. Now, the house shows are definitely down. And by house shows, I mean the TV. They don't actually run non-TV house shows. But yeah, those shows are struggling. Like, what did Dynamite do on Wednesday? Did they do 5,000 in that the old building that they used to run All In and All Out in?
Oh, the one at the in Suburban in the Burb. That's a travel crowd. I think it was like set up for 6.
Okay, so I was talking to somebody yesterday who is going to All Out, and he said that he thought it was like 4 or 5 that was
Okay.
actually there. So, and we didn't really get any Punk chants from what I remember. Like the crowd wasn't really into anything, but I
This
don't
is the
remember.
travel crowd mostly, though, also that goes to this show. This show specifically, the Chicago people generally wait till it's in town.
That's the crowd I want to see. I can't wait to see the reaction to some of that.
That'll be interesting Sunday to see if they react. Well, and who knows? Maybe Punk's actually going to end up on that show. We don't know yet.
Yes, the investigation might be wrapped up by then.
I swear to you,
Conveniently.
I am not trying to do revisionist history yet or here, but on Sunday when all that stuff happened and Tony Khan made that statement at the press conference, I was like, somebody needs to call him on his BS. He was there.
Yeah, it happened in front of him, but a friend of mine actually had a good point. He goes, lawyers are probably involved somehow.
I'm sure, but I would, not that I would if I don't want to go to those shows, and I'm not even really dissing anybody for not saying that, but that was like my BS meter just went up immediately. I was like, he's there, he saw it, he had to have talked to all parties. So this investigation, whatever it is, like he's the first witness on the scene. Like his word means the most in this entire thing.
Can I throw another theory out there?
Okay.
That the investigation is merely a delay tactic to say that neither one of them are on the pay-per-view?
Or what if they are?
Oh, God. I don't know. It also felt like to me, it's like, well, I don't really want to come down hard on anybody. And you know what? I'm going to have an investigation. I'm going to hear what people have to say about this. And then I'll lightly tap somebody on the wrist. That's what this feels like.
What happens in cases like this is, you think AEW and WWE have these tribal fan bases. You split locker rooms with stuff like this. You have a team who is against Punk, and then you have a team who has got his back because they're friends with him or whatever. And that is the part that I'm a little worried about as far as that locker room is concerned. Is how split it really is.
Yeah, and I'll let Scott get in here as well, but it's one of those things where I'm just like, well, the locker room has to listen to somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those things where, if it was a strong hand at the top, who cares if the locker room's split? Because what the guy up top says goes.
Okay, I agree with you, but it was only, 3 years ago where Tony was getting lauded by this same wrestling media crowd for being the nicest boss in comparison to Vince McMahon in wrestling. Oh, Tony is actually taking the other side. And so I feel like that's still the same Tony, but people are taking advantage of that, I believe. And yeah, I mean, he will need to put his foot down. But at the same time, when he is the single most important person in that company when it comes to marketing, when it comes to PR, when it comes to all of the information that is out there, if he shows any negativity towards a performer, that stuff goes far with the wrestling media. So it's tricky. It's really tricky for him. He needs Jim Ross as a bad guy so he could be the good guy, right? That's how Vince did it.